My dear friends, Good Yontif, Lashana Tova. Were we sitting together in our sanctuary tonight, I would begin my remarks asking you to raise your hands if you've worn a mask at some point in the past week. And my guess is that most of your hands would be up, and I hope we all understand that the wearing of masks can help us to fulfill the mitzvah of pikuach nefesh, preserving life. No matter how we feel about masks, and no one really likes them, they are an integral and inescapable part of the landscape of our daily lives in this pandemic-inspired period of social distancing and self-isolation. They pose all kinds of problems that no one anticipated. For example, it's very frustrating when I try to use my iPhone, but I can't open it up because my face recognition doesn't work when I'm wearing a mask. And how many of us in the grocery store produce section find it impossible to open up the plastic bags because we can't lick our fingers? And let's not even talk about our glasses fogging up. You know, last week at our second day Rosh Hashanah drive-through shofar sounding, it was wonderful to see some of you in person at temple, but since everyone was masked and we maintained proper social distancing, it was difficult at first to recognize everyone. I couldn't see your faces from far away, and it was only when I got close enough with the appropriate 6 feet distance that I could see who it was who had come. Masks have become part and parcel of our lives, whether we like it or not. So tonight, I want to talk about masks. Now, this sacred day has many different names, and one of those names is Yom Kippurim. We just heard Cantor Sax's hauntingly beautiful rendition of Kol Nidre, in which she sang Yom Kippurim Ze ad Yom Kippurim haba aleinu letova. From this Yom Kippurim to the next, may it be good for us. Now, in previous years, I've shared with you how our rabbinic tradition takes the name Yom Kippurim, which we translate as the Day of Atonement, and makes a pun, Yom Kippurim, a day that is like Purim. How are Yom Kippurim and Purim connected? Well, one answer is that on Purim we put on our masks, and on Yom Kippur we take them off. But another refers to the book of Esther. You see, Esther is not a traditional Hebrew name. Some scholars believe that it is linked to the Babylonian goddess of fertility, Ishtar, which is also the name of a terrible movie, but that's another story. While Mordechai refers to the Babylonian god of war, Marduk. But the name Esther is also connected to the Hebrew word Hester, which means hidden. The concept of Hester Panim refers to God's hidden face. Esther is the only book in the Bible in which God's name is never directly mentioned. God is hidden in the Purim story, and while Esther does not wear a mask, she was hiding something, as her name suggests. She hid her identity as a Jew. She hid her dignity while dealing with the boorish king Achashverosh. But eventually, she needed to show her true self for her own sake and that of her people, to reveal who she really was. And this became the heroic act that allowed justice to prevail. Now, during the next 24 hours, we, like Esther, will be removing our masks, standing before God and pleading our case for the new year. On Yom Kippurim, we show our true faces. Now, the Hebrew word for face is panim. In Yiddish, it's punim, same thing. And an interesting thing about the word panim is that it's one of the few Hebrew words that is singular, but written and pronounced in the plural. There are a few others, but not many. Mayim is water, chayim is life. But if you think about it, the plurality of panim, of face, makes sense, because our faces are constantly changing. And the truth is, we have many faces. Some we show, and some we mask. In English, as well as in Hebrew, face is both a noun and a verb. We can see a face, but we also face our fears. We face the unknown, the future, the truth. We face one another's, but we also face ourselves. And the truth is, we don't always like what we see. And sometimes we go through all kinds of efforts to fit a preconceived notion of who we think we are or who we want to be. There's a story that I love to tell of a man who was to be married in 3 months. He wanted to make sure that he would look his best at his upcoming wedding. So he went to a tailor and he ordered a custom-made bespoke suit. The tailor took his measurements, showed him the options for fabrics, and told him to return in 2 months for a final fitting. Well, 2 months later, the man returned to the tailor shop expecting to find his new suit, and he was greeted by a very apologetic tailor who told him that he was so busy the suit wasn't finished yet, but if he came back in 2 weeks, his suit would be ready. Well, the groom had no choice. And 2 weeks later, he returned, and again the tailor apologized and said the suit wasn't quite ready, but it would be in a week. Well, a week later, he came back, and you guessed it, no suit. Now, the groom was panicking. His wedding was just a few days away. "Don't worry," said the tailor. "Come to my store on the morning of your wedding, and I absolutely guarantee the suit will be ready." Well, the day of the wedding came. The groom walked into the tailor shop, and the tailor, with a broad smile on his face, presented him with his new suit. The groom was in such a hurry, he didn't even stop to try it on. He got to the synagogue, put on his brand new suit, and to his dismay, he discovered that it didn't fit at all. One sleeve was too long, the other was too short, one leg was shorter than the other. It was a mess. There was no time to fix it. The wedding was scheduled to begin in just a few moments. Well, his best man looked at the suit and said, if you twist your shoulder and bend one of your legs when you're walking down the aisle, the suit looks like it might fit." And so as the music began for the processional, the poor groom walked down the aisle with his shoulder high in the air and one leg bent. And as he passed the guests who were seated at the aisle, he could hear them whispering to one another, "That poor man, look at him all bent out of shape like that. But that suit, what a great tailor." My friends, how often do we twist and turn ourselves in order to fit some preconceived notion of who we wish we were, but deep down, we know we will never achieve? On this Yom Kippurim, we stand unfiltered before God and ourselves, all pretense gone, all masks discarded. And tomorrow we will hear Moses' stirring words, "Atem nitzavim kulchem hayom lifnei Adonai Elohechem." You stand, all of you this day, facing Adonai, your God. Now Moses is both a troubled and often troubling figure in the Torah. In the last verses of the last chapter of Deuteronomy, we find the words, "And there has not risen another prophet like Moses, who knew God panim el panim, face to face." The intimacy between God and Moses is remarkable. When Moses returned from Mount Sinai with the second set of tablets, his face was radiant. It says karnei shamayim, and karnei means beams or lights, but Leonardo da Vinci, when he heard that, the word karen also means horns. There were beams of light, but he translated it as horns, which is why the Michelangelo sculpture of Moses has horns on it, and why people believe that Jews sometimes have horns on their heads. His face was so radiant that the people couldn't look at him, and every subsequent time that Moses encountered God in the tent of meeting, before speaking to the people, because his face shone, he would cover his face with a mask, a masveh, so that he could communicate with them. And some commentators posit that Moses always wore a mask when speaking to the Israelites. Think about that for a moment. Moses could speak to God panim el panim, face to face, but he couldn't show his face to his own people without a mask. And like so many of us, he hid his true self. On this Kol Nidre night, we come together, but we're hidden from each other. This year, we are separated by our computer screens. Now, there's a passage in the Zohar, the 11th century Kabbalistic text, that teaches that in the beginning of the Hebrew month of Elul, each of us stands achor el achor, back to back. But as Elul ends and we reach Rosh Hashanah, we begin to turn, and on Yom Kippur we stand panim el panim, face to face, with God and with one another. And that is the power of these days of awe. These words take on a significant and powerful meaning, especially during this time of isolation. We need to stand panim el panim. We need to face God, ourselves, and one another. And that, I firmly believe, is one of the most important and central aspects of belonging to a congregation. These past 7 months, almost 8 now, have been so difficult, and yet so filled with creativity and a new comprehension of community. We've prayed together online. We've studied, celebrated simchas, and found comfort in times of sorrow. And one of the main questions that Jewish professionals and prognosticators are asking today revolves around the future of the synagogue. Will our success in providing a virtual platform ultimately harm us? After all, as we said on Erev Rosh Hashanah, it's nice attending services in your living room. You don't have to get all dressed up. You don't need to rush to get a seat or fight for a parking space. You can chat with those around you or online. And I have to say, I'm actually quite fascinated with the discussions that take place on Facebook when our services are simulcast, as they are right now. The greetings and the comments and the heartfelt prayers that many of you post are quite beautiful and poignant and meaningful, but not everybody agrees with me. Some of my colleagues don't like them at all. They feel that they're a distraction from the service and are inappropriate. Not me. Go ahead. Comment away. Right now. Write a comment. I'll wait. There's a saying attributed to the 20th century Jewish humorist Sam Levinson that I love to say. He was once asked why he went to a synagogue because he wasn't religious, and Levinson responded, "There are many reasons one would go to the synagogue. Take Ginsburg. He goes to talk to God. Me? I go to talk to Ginsburg." So in this virtual age, this age of virtual community, what's going to happen to the synagogue? And I think there are 2 major answers. The first is that those congregations that cannot or will not adapt to live streaming technology will suffer. Now, I don't mean just turning on a camera in the sanctuary and broadcasting the service. That's not enough. We've learned so much over the past 7 months. And a key lesson is that meaningful worship can and does take place online. We've seen it tonight in the comments. But it needs to be carefully crafted in such a way as to open a doorway of welcome and spirituality to all those participating. It can't be a show, and it shouldn't be inaccessible. It must be a moving experience for all, designed to include, to bring those who are present in and those who are unable to attend in person. And I want you to know that we at Temple Emanuel are committed to providing engaging and powerful online worship now and in the future. And we are particularly grateful to the Reynolds Family Foundation for a grant that has enabled us to purchase and soon to install new state-of-the-art broadcasting technology in our sanctuary, our chapel, our social hall, and throughout our building that will enable us, when we can safely return, to stream classes, worship services, meetings, and life cycle events anywhere around the world. But the second answer to the future of the synagogue in a post-COVID-19 world lies in the idea of panim el panim, face to face. As important as virtual worship has become, it will never replace the power of real-time, face-to-face connection. It is in the synagogue where we foster and create sacred community, that we can take off our masks and find meaning. It is in the ancient rituals and their modern interpretations that God's presence can be found with others. It is in moments of awe and spiritual awakening, in the laughter we share and the tears we shed. It is in the power of Torah and the excitement of learning It is in the beauty of the simchas and the depths of sorrows that take place within our walls. When we stand panim el panim, face to face, with ourselves, with God and one another, we create a kihila kedosha, a sacred community that no pandemic can destroy. And this brings me to one more aspect of community: the need to heal and the need to ask one another for forgiveness, to go through the process of teshuvah, of repentance, that this night, that the next 24 hours is all about. When we remove our masks, sometimes we see painful things. We acknowledge how we have hurt one another, and we know that we are not perfect and that we make mistakes. We see the path that we need to take to make amends, and this is our sacred task. And so once again, on this holiest night of the year, as I do every year, I challenge you. Tell the people you love that you love them. Whether you can do it in person, by phone, or by Zoom, reach out to those who need you. Ask for help. For those who want nothing more than to be there for you and to help you. And if you can, and sometimes we cannot, I understand, but make amends with those who have hurt you and to those whom you have hurt as well. My dear friends, on this Yom Kippurim, this day like Purim that we remove our masks, we are fragile and fearful, but we are also renewed and reinvigorated. And so may our striving for holiness allow us to face our fears and the future. May we be strong, and may God's choicest blessings be upon us all. Gmar Chatima Tova. May we all be sealed for a blessing in the book of life, and let us say, Amen.